make sure I give you the right one tonight instead of that one that goes to Ibbotson.
Okay.
Stand over like him.
The crew getting together for Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah. We got Thanksgiving both sides. Cake and burgers. We get everybody together. We get about kids and everything, 50 people. Myself, fresh, it's packed. It's okay.
So I'm going,
It's gonna rain on us all weekend.
I know, boy.
Oklahoma City's gotten neat. I know you have not been there at Christmas. Yeah. I'm gonna try to get that field trip up there, January, February. Monday is a better night for them. How about Monday night? You said you might not be able to go, but can you? If there's any a good time of the year to go, January, February would be pretty good for you. I'm gonna get. Okay. For go up there. What I'd like to do is we'll go see their new facility. Drive over, maybe catch the one in Tulsa that's nice, and end up at Edmond at 5:30 or so. So you can see it being used after work and people are in there and it's full. Then spend the night in Oklahoma City, kind of just see downtown. Really? Like on the scale, like what Sherwood has that big tour of lights through Sherwood Forest.
Yeah.
It's kind of like similar to that style. Oh wow.
Yeah, to see everything, I mean, it's just so much to look at. So
Very
it's
good.
a lot of fun.
Miss Sheila, you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'll let you get settled. Now, Thea, if you want to volunteer.
No, that's not right.
I
was serious, but I don't want to take us out.
Okay. Well, I mean, I gotta fill in for Andy. Yeah, not quite the same. Cheap substitute. Good evening. If you would like to join us, we always precede our council meeting with a word of prayer and a pledge of allegiance. I'm going to ask Alderwoman Sheila Whitmore to lead us in prayer.
Yes. If you'll bow with me. Our gracious Father, we thank you during this Thanksgiving season. We just give you thanks, Lord, for this wonderful community that you blessed us with. We just ask, Lord, for peace with all of the families during this holiday season. And we just ask, Lord, that you watch over us during the holidays as well as during this meeting. And may everything that we do be pleasing in your sight. And it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will go on and call this meeting to order. Ms. Francis, in the absence of Mr. Garrett, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Grimes?
Here.
Mr. Pruitt?
Here.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Ms. Whitmore?
Here.
You should have received copies of the November 10th regular city council meeting and the special city council meeting on November 18th.
I make a motion for approval as submitted.
Motion and second for approval as submitted. Any discussion, additions, or corrections? If none, all in favor of approval of these two sets of minutes, as submitted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 6-0. I'm going to ask you to indulge me, if you will, for a few moments. We always take an opportunity every month to recognize those employees who are reaching a certain milestone in their employment in the city of Conway. We have about 450 to 500 employees, depending on the time of the year. And they do a great job for us, and we don't get a chance to say thank you nearly enough. So on their special anniversary dates of their employment here at the city of Conway, we would like to say thank you and recognize that and give them their year of service pin. So for 5 years of service, and we threw him into the Lions game that first night. And it's been a good 5 years of service. Steve Ibbotson, our Parks and Recreation Director, if you remember 5 years ago, it wasn't necessarily a good time to Lance Frankie new Parks and Recreation Director. It was in one sense, it wasn't in another. So, Steve, thank you, sir. And here is your 5-year plan. Absolutely. And for 10 years of service in the city clerk treasurer's office, Karen Francis, our administrator, you need to come up too. And though he's not here, Stanley Knopp, our facilities manager at Parks and Recreation, has been here for 15 years. So let's give these two trees.
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks, Steve.
Very good. First up is our monthly financial report, and I'll ask Mr. Tyler Winningham, our Chief Financial Officer, to step up and walk us through that. Mr. Winningham?
Yes, sir. Looking at the month of October, starting off with the general fund as we always do. Overall, it's shaping up to be, looks like it's going to be a fairly decent year for the general fund. Getting into some of the details there up in the revenue section, we've mentioned this, or I've mentioned this the past couple months, the payment in lieu of tax. That number's quite a bit over budget. We're to the point now where we should have collected all that, and now here in the in the next coming weeks, we'll distribute that out. Most of it's going to go back to the county. Some of it will go to the street fund. You'll see a payment in lieu of tax revenue line in the street fund. In just a minute, that's zero, but once we get that distributed, that'll be there. And then that line item will look more like it should, as opposed to being so far over what that budget figure is. Sales tax was up just shy of 5.5%. It was up 5.4% for the same month collected last year. Excuse me. The year to date, that puts us up 4.2%. And one thing I'll mention, revenue and expenditure that kind of go together. You'll see the state grant revenue line and then the airport expenditure line. Those both are quite a bit out of whack compared to budget. I've got a budget amendment ordinance prepared to put in front of the City Council at our next meeting for you to vote on to recognize that state grant revenue that's come in related to our airport, different airport projects we've got going on, and then appropriate that down into the airport expenditure line, so that'll get cleaned up by year's end as well. That's all the notes I have on the general funds. Anybody have any questions or comments before we move forward? We'll move on to the street fund. That's just over $1 million net revenue there now. Keep in mind, a good portion of that is the half-cent highway department sales tax that we're sort of sticking back in our back pocket to be used on all of our major street work that we've got going out there now. Year to date, we've collected just over $950,000 of that sales tax. So out of the 1,043,000, there's only about 85 to 87,000 that's we know we're not going to. We haven't already elected to spend that. So I just wanted to point that out to you so we don't sort of get a false sense of hope that, I mean, the money's there, but we've already said we're going to spend it, so we know what we're going to use that for. Any other questions or comments on the street fund? Moving on to sanitation, they've always also got a healthy bottom line coming into the end of the year as well. That capital outlay expenditure line item, I talked to Joe today, our new sanitation director, and asked him, you know, if he had plans to get that capital budget spent by year's end. He said he will probably get some of it spent, but more than likely a good bit of that he'll request to roll forward to the next year, as opposed to just trying to hurry up and spend the money to get it spent. He's still evaluating purchases and wanting to make sure he gets everything like he thinks it ought to be. So that net revenue that we will likely end up with will more than likely be spent in the following year. Any other questions or comments on sanitation? Moving on to the airport fund. Not a lot to speak about there. Positive bottom line. Fuel sales are, of course, outweighing our fuel purchases, so that's a good thing to see. And that's really all I've got there. Any other questions or comments on the airport? Last page is just updating you on the balance of all our major project funds, the Parks and Rec hamburger tax, or advertising and promotion tax, our pay-as-you-go sales tax that goes towards major street projects and police vehicles, and then we have our two impact fees, the street and the parks impact fees, and you can see where all those balances are at the end of October. That's all I've got, Mr. Mayor.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve. I will point out that if you go back to the balance sheet of the general fund, you'll notice the cash is in a improved position as we start closing out some of those airport grants we've been talking about for some time. And with the cash operating and cash reserve, which the cash reserve will get another contribution at the end of this year, another $500,000. So we're in a much better position. As a matter of fact, the cash operating, I think, is better than our total fund balance position was 5 years ago. So we have recovered into a much safer position through frugal budgeting and frugal spending on the part of our various departments. And so we're in a better position. We always have to guard that, but I will have to say it's been a job well done for a whole lot of people working in the city of Conway to stay within and their managed budgets. And I have to say thank you for that, because we do like being in a much stronger position than we were 5 years ago that I referenced when we brought Mr. Ibbotson on with the Parks Department. So that is good. No other discussion? All in favor of approving this monthly financial report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That carries 6-0. First item on our agenda tonight is a public hearing with an accompanying ordinance to discuss the closing of an easement on lots 1 and 2 of the Lewis Crossing Phase 1 subdivision. That being said, I will declare the public hearing is open and ask anybody who would like to speak for or against this closing of this easement, these utility easements in essence, on these lots at Lewis Crossing Phase 1 subdivision can step forward to the microphone now. No one would like to speak for or against. I will close the issue, close the public hearing, and bring the issue back before the City Council for discussion tonight. We have an ordinance before us for action if you choose to act on it. It's Ordinance 015-132.
132.
Make a motion to waive 3 readings.
Second.
Motion and second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor of waiving the 3 readings and bringing this ordinance forward for action on tonight's agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 6-0, and the ordinance is before us.
Make
correct?
a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Motion and second for the adoption of this ordinance. Any discussion? I'll let the train pass real quick. Very good. If, does Brian, do you, Mr. Patrick, with planning or anybody else know that we have a letter from Conway Corporation? Is that the only utility in this easement?
Right, it was. It was a forced sewer main, and that was been I guess, a problem with the development of the Lewis Crossing Shopping Center since day one. They knew they were going to have to move that thing because it was basically where all the buildings are going to line up and sit on top of it. So, yes, to answer the question, it's a Conway Corp. Forced main sewer. It's now been relocated, all operational to the south now.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Patrick. Any other discussion? If not, being an ordinance, Ms. Francis.
Ms. Whitmore?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
And Mr. Jones?
Yes.
That ordinance passes 6-0. The next list of items are under community development. Mr. Hawkins would normally take these over, but he is absent tonight, so I'll stand in for him. The first item we have is a resolution to establish the intent of reimbursement of certain costs and expenses incurred in connection with the construction of the city's planned Western Arterial Loop. Mr. Winningham, do you want to speak to this? Sure. If you would.
If the council will recall, in a previous meeting not too long ago, excuse me, we looked at our funding strategy for all of the Central Landing street improvements, and then also any other big projects we knew that were coming down the pike pretty soon. One of those being I think they call it the basin paving portion of the South Interchange, also known as the beginning of the Western Loop. It's got a few different names. And we talked about in that meeting that we intended to probably have to go out and get a 5-year loan to do that. In a meeting after that, I think the city council accepted the bid on that, which was just under $2.6 million. So Mr. Hall, in meeting with him and kind of asking, when do we think we're going to start seeing some bills on this? He said the big ones probably won't start coming until next spring, but between now and then we will have some design costs, probably some engineering costs. But in order to hold off on starting the clock ticking on when the interest accrues on that loan, we thought it might be in our best interest just to wait until the big bills start coming in to actually go out and get the loan. So what this resolution does, upon the advice of Mr. Wilburn, our bond counsel, it just says we expect to do a $2.6 million loan sometime in the near future, and any expenses we incur between now and then related to this project, we intend to reimburse ourselves out of those loan proceeds for those.
Very good. Any questions of Mr. Winningham? This action before you is a resolution. It's Resolution R-1570.
Make a motion for the adoption of the resolution.
Motion and second for adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? There is no discussion. All in favor of approving this resolution, authorizing us to pay these and then get reimbursed from our ultimate loan on this project. All in favor of this resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Winningham.
Yes, sir.
The next item is a resolution to support the University of Arkansas Community Design Center application to the U.S. EPA Urban Water Grant to fund the schematic design for the former scrap metal property located on Markham Street. I'm going to ask Mr. Scott Grummer to walk us through what this is and what we're attempting to do and kind of lay this effort out in the broader schematic of our efforts towards Markham Street. If you can kind of set the stage for what we're doing here. Okay, Mr. Grummer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Basically, on the resolution, I shared with you some of the various ordinances and resolutions that we have passed during this process of acquisition of the Conway scrap metal yard, which happened in 2014. Out of that, we've applied for brownfield grants to clean up the site because of the contamination. We have just recently received a cleanup draft, which is being reviewed right now, and it looks promising. It actually looks better than what we thought, so it's coming out really good. So out of this, from the brownfield redevelopment, we need designs for the redevelopment of the site. The designs are going to be imperative with part of pairing in with the actual cleanup process. We can reduce costs depending on how we reutilize the soil on site. So the Conway scrap metal yard, if you remember, was going to be the catalyst for revitalization as well as the process of trying to mitigate flooding for downtown. The mitigation of flooding is the most imperative thing. So back in July, we tried to apply for a Our Town grant through the National Endowment for the Arts. We were unsuccessful with that grant, but that was in partnership with the University of Arkansas Community Design Center. The UACDC is an entity in Fayetteville that is part of University of Arkansas, and they actually did the designs for the Creative Corridor in downtown Little Rock on Main Street. Out of those designs, the city of Little Rock were able to go for a greater amount of funding through EPA, which actually went towards engineering and construction of Main Street and those design processes. It wasn't built out exactly as the designs, but the actual designs themselves created the mechanisms for going for more money. So basically what we're looking at is, out of this process, which this is a small grant of $60,000, the UACDC will facilitate the design process, and it'll be a public process where we can bring the public back in and work through that. And at the end of it, we'll be able to utilize that as a stepping stone to go towards $1 million plus grant to facilitate the actual redevelopment of the site. That would include engineering and construction. So this is one in several stages, but EPA is partnering with the city very well. They've been intricately involved. They see this as a spotlight that they want to help, and so we've got a great partner in EPA. We're really looking for some help on this, and then there's other avenues to go. That basically frames up where we're at on this particular grant. It's a great opportunity, and also the UACDC is world recognized for their designs. They've achieved many awards, so it also provides a venue for the city to get recognition in different areas.
Any questions of Mr. Grummer?
I make a motion for adoption of this resolution.
Second. Motion and second to adopt this resolution. Is there any discussion? I will point out this is a chance to parlay or leverage our efforts to get even more money. I think that's a great idea. If there's no other discussion, all in favor of approving this resolution, which would be R-1571, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That carries 6-0. And Mr. Grummer, you're next up on the other one too, I guess?
Yes, sir.
That next one is a consideration to go along with MetroPlan to provide the request for qualifications for design and engineering services for the redevelopment of Markham Street just alongside the former scrap metal yard. So, Mr. Grummer, I'll let you explain the moving parts of this one as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if you remember the Jumpstart program, we started back in 2013 with the acceptance of a $200,000 design grant to come up with designs for Markham Street being the next great gem for the city of Conway and the extension of its downtown redevelopment. Out of those, that design process, which was a public process, and we got really good feedback, there were implementation and action strategies that MetroPlan was looking for the city to engage. We started that process at the beginning of this year with the passing of the Markham Street neighborhood specific plan. And within that specific plan, it calls for the actual redevelopment. So one of the benefits of this grant is another leverage that we have the opportunity to take advantage of. So through Metro Plan, they have STP grant funds available for the different jumpstart projects that happened in cities around central Arkansas. And we are earmarked for that grant. The estimated cost on Markham Street improvements, that's just street and drainage. It does not include, I believe it's just street and drainage. It does not include other utility improvements, which we'll need to partner with Conway Corp on. But just for those specific, it's $3.5 million estimated. So to begin that process, Metro Plan is offered to do the RFQ to procure an engineering firm to do the designs for the redevelopment of Markham. That's the initial process. Once an engineering firm is procured, the state of Arkansas Highway Transportation Department has to approve the contract, and that contract review takes about 9 months to do, which is why they need to get on this right away. So out of that $3.5 million, the city's portion is 20%. So the city would need to fund $700,000, but initially, right now, on the beginning of the process would be engineering fees. So the match part of that would be $107,000. That's what the city would need to come to for the match, and then the remaining. We could work with, I've spoken with the city engineer, and he's said that there's street funds in which we can work with, and the mayor and I have talked through that, and I'll allow you to elaborate on that as well. So, with the scrap metal property being redeveloped and redesigned, this would fall in line. So in 2016, we would look at the contract approvals happening through the state, and then designs happening towards the end of 16 to the beginning of 17, roughly. And I would hope that we would be able to start construction late 17, 2018, somewhere around there.
Very good. Any questions of Mr. Grummer? And the way I understand it, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Grummer, is by going through MetroPlan, this RFQ process, they will actually create a body of qualified firms, of which each individual city will be able to select from them. So we'll get a chance to vet and choose the firm we want to work with and create a contract with them to be reviewed and proceed on. It's not like they're going to pick our engineering firm for us and for all the cities. That's the way I understood it.
That's the way I understood it as well.
So the individuality of our effort is still going to be there for us.
Correct.
It's just we're going through them to aggregate that body of engineering firms who meet those qualifications needed to do this work through the federal funds, the monies. The STP stands for the Surface Transportation Program. Okay? And we needed approval to proceed through with MetroPlan.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion of that motion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That carries 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Grummer.
Thank you.
The next item up is an ordinance to rezone property located on East Amity Road, east of Amity Road, north of Dave Ward Drive, which is Arkansas 286, that portion of it, from I-1, I-3, and A1 to C3. This would be, I guess the name of it is Lewis Ranch Road, is what Lewis Ranch area development is what we're talking about. The Planning Commission met on, I think, November 17th to deal with this issue, and they voted 7-0 that the request be sent to the City Council with a recommendation of approval. They are consolidating all this property in for this development. Is there a motion on this ordinance to be ordinance
Make a motion that
015?
we waive the 3 readings.
Second. Motion and second to waive the three readings. All in favor of waiving the three readings and bringing this ordinance forward for action on tonight's agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 6-0. This will be
Move for
ordinance 015
32.
130
Sorry, 133.
133. And we do have a motion and second down there. Okay, we have a motion and second. The ordinance is before us for action tonight. Any discussion? There is no discussion. Being an ordinance, Mr. Garrett.
Mr.
Miss-
Ledbetter? Yes. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Not Mr., not Garrett. Miss Francis.
Ms. Whitmore?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt?
That passes 6-0. The next item up, last under community development, is consideration to approve a conditional use request from the Conway Development Corporation for hospital services for property located at 2255 Sturgis Road. This was seen by the Planning Commission on its regular meeting. Actually, the meeting was on November 16th. The Planning Commission voted 6-2, with Commissioners Mark Lewis and Marilyn Armstrong voting in opposition. But the 6-2 vote was to forward this request to the City Council with a recommendation of approval. So this comes to us with the 6-2 vote of approval out of the Planning Commission. Mr. Gates, you want to work with this one to start with?
Jamie Gates. I'm here on behalf of the Conway Development Corp. We've got a conditional use request for the southernmost 9.5 acres of the Meadows Technology Park. It's actually all south of where the fence currently stops, and you might not associate this land with the technology park if you were just driving by. Coincidentally, it's the southernmost 9.5 acres in the city. So everything south and east of this property is in the county. The ultimate use will be for a behavioral health facility operated by Acadia Health. It's a non-residential acute care. I've got with me Matt Wilcher with Acadia. He'll be available for any questions. He's got a couple decades and a doctorate in the field, and so he's probably more prepared, hopefully more prepared to answer questions about the day-to-day operations. Worked with them for a little bit of time in identifying the site. We feel like, one, it is a good use of the property from a land use plan in that it is a commercial endeavor, but it's not going to generate or depend upon traffic in any real fashion. Second, we feel like it's a sign of things to come with Sturgis Road and South Conway. I think this may be one of the first projects that we could attribute to the coming South Interchange, which we talked about. And so we do think that that area is going to develop, and that is welcome by the tenants out there who want to see this area continue to grow. And finally, and not unimportantly to us, is the contribution to the local economy. We're talking a significant number of jobs, payroll, and it's also a service that we have checked with Baptist Hospital and Conway Regional as a needed service kind of in our healthcare economy. So for those reasons, our board wanted to pursue the project and have this request before you now. Just as a bit of housekeeping, we've also met with the closest tenants in the technology park. They support the project, and I've already talked about some of our other community partners.
Any questions of Mr. Gates?
It's just, when do you estimate the completion date to be?
I'm going to defer on that one to Matt as well.
Mr. Wiltshire, you're welcome to step up, if you would.
Again, my name is Matt Wiltshire. I'm currently the CEO of Mill Creek in Fordyce, Arkansas, but with Acadia, and have been tasked with hopefully getting this project up and going. What was the question again? Completion, we're looking, I'm thinking if we get approval and from construction, a year and a half is what I would think.
Which is pretty quick timeline for
Yeah,
getting a facility like this up and running. I'm
Acadia is a growth company, and they've already got plans, for of this size hospital. They have companies that would come in and look at building. I think they would have local contractors do different pieces of it, but they've got it kind of down to a science. They've really growing a lot. So.
Very good. Now, I think Mr. Gates might have told me this, but you could probably answer it as well, that Acadia is actually headquartered, located in Franklin, Tennessee?
That's correct.
Very good. And that's one of the cities we have gone to benchmark against. And when Mr. Gates said it's kind of the sign of things to come, I think that's at least according to that benchmark, is a pretty good sign. So
yeah,
we appreciate that.
We're looking at this. In looking at this area, we felt like it would be a real good area to build. Currently, if you need this type service, you're going to Little Rock, or I'm not sure north of here where might be Fort Smith. So there is some distance there. So this would be having a facility right here that loved ones, again, if they're have severe mental illness, you would be able to be right here with them. So,
thank you. Any questions of Mr. Wiltshire?
The facility that you're in charge of, will this one be similar?
Well, the facility I'm in charge of is psych residential for kids, and so this one would not be a residential facility. This would be acute care. So where the length of stay for the kids that I have are anywhere from 6 to 8 months. For this one, you're looking at an average stay of probably 7 to 10 days. So, this is acute stabilization. This would be someone maybe who is suicidal. We would stabilize them, and then we would work with the outpatient providers and get them back and integrated into the community. So,
Is it just for adults?
no, ma'am. It is. We're talking 80 to 100 beds. Probably a quarter of those would be for children and youth, and then the majority, of course, would be for adults. And then, there'd be a Jerry program for seniors, and then A&D.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I make a motion we approve this conditional use.
Second. Motion and second to approve this conditional use request. I will note that there are no conditions attached to this. Any discussion of the motion? If there is no discussion of the motion, all in favor of approving this conditional use permit to allow hospital services at the Metis Technology Park at the property located at 2255 Sturgis Road, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 6-0. And Mr. Wiltshire, thank you very much. We appreciate your company's interest in Conway and hope everything goes well with this. This is a much-needed service that's not provided in this area.
We're very excited.
So thank you very much. And I will point out something that Mr. Gates said that begs the question, really. This being the southeast corner of the city of Conway, and it's still 3/4 of a mile or so down to where we've invested almost $6 million for a new south loop, and the state's put in about 20, and maybe more than that, is we probably need to move, and that contract's underway, so that will open up in no time. This project is going to help pull us down there in a much greater way than we currently are. The issue of annexation, what we're going to annex needs to happen fairly quickly. So you can expect us to move on that early this next year to start that process to bring this area into the city of Conway, because if this company is going to invest this kind of money right on the borders of Conway, there are no planning restrictions, nothing to help protect their investment in this area from there to the loop. And we need to ensure the roadways work, the planning area is developed congruent to what kind of investment we're seeing there. And that this is one of the few times we get a chance to put the constraints on our entranceway to the city of Conway that's not already screwed up. So we can do this better, and that'll come with the authority that annexation allows us to make. So expect that coming in the next few months. So Mr. Gates, Mr. Wiltshire, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
The last item I have on our agenda tonight is an ordinance appropriating funds for civil service expenses for entry-level police officer testing. You'll remember that we do not put civil service expenses into the budget on a regular basis because we simply don't know what they are. We have to fund them regardless, but we don't want them to take up space in the budget that could be used for other things if we don't need it. So we just kind of have in practice, agreed to fund these on an as-needed basis. You'll recognize that one of the things we set up last year for inclusion in the 2016 budget is hiring new police officers for the first time in a long time. This is the money we need to start that process, the $1,570 referred to in this ordinance. This just puts it in the budget and allows us to make these expenses to get ready to do that police officer testing in advance of hiring these new police officers in the 2016 budget year.
Make a motion, we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
Motion and second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor of waiving the 3 readings on this ordinance and bringing it forward for action on tonight's agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 6-0. The,
adoption.
I'm sorry?
Move for adoption of the ordinance.
You don't even want to let me get my statement out. You're just Johnny on the spot tonight, aren't you?
Me, I'll wait then. Go ahead. Say your piece.
Motion and second. We can act on this tonight because we waived the readings, and Mr. Jones has allowed for us to make a motion, and we've had a second. By golly, we're going to get this done tonight.
Man, I applaud you, man. You're just
I
all
appreciate that. Now, don't let me be in the way. We have an ordinance for your consideration right now and a motion and second. Any discussion? This will be ordinance 015-134.
134.
If there's no discussion, Ms. Francis.
Mr. Pruitt. Aye. Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Whitmore.
Yes.
Mr. Grimes. Aye. Mr. Ledbetter.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
That passes 6-0. That's the last item of business I have on tonight's agenda.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'm not gonna say another thing. Another word.
I'm
done.
I'm motion and second. He's done. Done for the year, right?
For the night.
Okay. Motion and second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Passes 6-0. Thank you very much.